Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
This week, Patrick Cotnoir returns to the show for Hitchcock's iconic 1960 horror film, Psycho. And of course, it wouldn't be an episode with Patrick without some deep Star Wars talks. Tune in later in the episode as the boys share their thoughts on the 1985 film, Ewoks, The Battle for Endor.
Our guest today is the producer of the George Lucas talk show and ASCAT at UCB LA. He's a nice boy with a good butt. Patrick Cotnoir joins the show once again for what has become our beloved, dreaded annual tradition. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us.
We're back, baby. We're back.
Welcome back. He's got such a good butt, he's not even sitting on it.
It's true, I'm standing. I was, a couple weeks before you emailed me, I was thinking, it feels like it's been so long since I was on. And then you emailed, and it was a joyful occasion.
It has somehow, I don't know how it happened in terms of, I think when we did the first season, we didn't have a show yet, it wasn't out for anybody to hear. And I remember saying to them, maybe if he's not too busy, I don't know if he'll want to, maybe Patrick will want to come on for Star Wars if we're lucky. And now it has become an annual tradition that, that much like the film we're talking about today, people really love, but it's also quite scary in that
you can't get rid of me.
We just a little up top. So folks who are looking at their podcast feed or their YouTube stream, folks who are listening to this, you can also watch this on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. Check it out. Subscribe. You can see inside Patrick's closet. He's coming to us from inside his closet. Now
couldn't find my headphones. Said it would be easier to do it from the closet. And now I could just pull anything off that I want. Look at this shirt. I could wear this shirt, but I'm not going to, Thank you for joining me in here, though.
Yeah. I'm still missing the connection of I lost my headphones, so I'm going to go in the closet. But you know what? Whatever's working.
I would normally record it from my living room, which is large and cavernous. Okay. And it gets very echoey. So I figured there would be less echo. Like people do voiceovers during the COVID. A lot of people did voiceover for animation in their closets because it's smaller and there's a lot of padding on every side because there's a lot of clothes everywhere. So in my brain, this was the better move. We'll see if it is. I don't know.
Now, typically,
hey, listen, it's a great move. Mike not knowing that is exactly why we have Kyle, because Mike is a big dum-dum.
Now, typically, when people record voiceover in their closets, their microphone does work, right?
I guess that's true. Yes, that is true.
They don't have to figure out a Yeti mic that makes them sound like the Lincoln at Disneyland.
Yes, that's true. I plugged it in. It didn't work. I don't know what's going on. Now I'm having like a coughing attack in this closet because man was not supposed to live in his closet.
Oh,
this is a disaster. As soon as I logged on, I knew this one was going to be a disaster.
Hey, fitting for the fourth time we're doing this, much like Psycho 4. This is other than a few glimpses of the things that we cared about in the past, it's just all bullshit.
He's there. He's on the phone. He's calling into a radio show. We love it.
And then there's Elliot,
the kid from E.T., CCH Pounder.
Yep, some
gang's
boobs.
all here. Juliet from
Olivia
Romeo and
Hussey.
Yeah.
She escaped the house in Canada, and now she gave birth to Norman Bates.
So to be clear, we are talking about Psycho today.
Yeah.
But for people confused by the title, we're only half talking about Psycho. This is a running tradition. We are a podcast. We never say we're a comedy podcast. We don't do shtick. We mostly just talk about the movies, sometimes very dryly. But as I've previously framed it, Patrick is the closest thing our podcast has to a bug main. When he shows up, things can just be broken.
Buzz.
Patrick is the only person who is allowed to pick their next movie during their current episode. And also, half of any Patrick Cotnoir episode is going to be devoted to a specific piece of Star Wars ephemera. The first time you were on, we just talked Star Wars. The second time How Green Was My Valley paired with the PlayStation game Jedi Power Battles.
Mm-hmm.
Third time was Frankenstein paired with Bounty Hunter.
A mostly unplayable port on a PS4.
Correct.
Truly terrible.
Correct. And not only was it terrible, what made that one fun for me was you, Patrick, finally realizing, oh, I actually want to talk about Frankenstein a lot. And I've now forced myself to have to go, guys, let's stop talking about one of my favorite films to talk about digital Ugnaughts.
We got to talk about Level 1, Dead or Alive Miko. Come on. What a
Level
game.
1, because that's all we got through.
That's all we got through. It's not my fault.
So today is half Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho and half the second Ewok made-for-TV movie, Battle for Endor.
And a little bit of Mick Garris's Psycho 4.
Oh, we're going to talk the full Psycho franchise. Don't you worry.
Because I do want to point out, even if we weren't talking about Battle for Endor, I could talk about how Mick Garris was the receptionist at Lucasfilm and was the controller for R2-D2 during the Star Wars Holiday Special. So there is a connection.
Yep, there is a connection.
And some might say that's Mick Garris's finest contribution. Who can say? Really? Not big. This is unfortunately I've seen
more than one of his movies. I can.
As we're recording this, I think later this week, an episode of Podcast Like It's 1992 is coming out where Tom and I are talking about Sleepwalkers. So we're on a real Mick Garris tear.
Real Mick Garris kick.
Days.
I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
But
Kick Garris.
We're going to be talking a fair amount about a director who is, I would say, a little more esteemed than Mick Garris, which is Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Jim and Ken Wheat, the directors of the Battle for Endor.
Yes, Battle for Endor, and they also wrote. What was it I told you? They wrote something notable. They were the writers on some notable film.
Oh yeah, you sent me something.
Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Dream Master.
There it is. Thank you. Yes, they did Dream.
Also, Pitch Black.
Yes, that was it. Pitch Black and Dream Master.
Yeah.
From the
right. Yes,
Battle for Endor. Yeah.
Sadly, not Chronicles of Riddick, though.
No.
But nobody's perfect.
You can tell it's a Patrick Cotnoir episode because we're supposed to be talking about Alfred Hitchcock, and we're already talking about the Chronicles of Riddick. So you can tell where we are.
What do you think Hitchcock would have thought of Chronicles of Riddick?
Great question.
That I would like to know.
That's a great question.
Because we know he had some weird tastes, like all the great directors do. Sometimes go off the beaten path. Do you think he'd like it?
Do you think Vin would have been in a Hitchcock movie?
1,000,000%.
Oh, he would have. He would have tried.
Yeah.
He would have tried hard to get into one of those.
Because we're talking
Connery was in one,
and we're talking Family Plots era, Frenzy era Hitchcock, right? If he had continued,
where he just loses the thread.
Yep. Before we get into Psycho, Patrick, do you know about the whole Steven Spielberg thing with Hitchcock? The possibly apocryphal story?
No, tell me more.
Spielberg, obviously, he's making it in Hollywood. He really wants to meet all of his heroes, right?
Sure.
We know he meets John Ford and all of these guys, right?
Yep.
Hitchcock refuses to meet with him. And so the story goes, one day Bruce Dern is sitting down with him because they were doing Family Plots together. And Bruce Dern is like, why won't you meet the kid? He's, Spielberg, Spielberg. And Hitchcock tries to play it off like, oh, the boy that made the Fish movie. And Dern is like, come on, why don't you meet with him? And Hitchcock tells him, again, this is supposed to story, tells him, I can't meet with the boy with the Fish movie. I'd feel like such a whore. He made that movie. I got paid $1 million to do the voice for the ride at Universal Studios. I would feel like too much of a whore.
Wow.
And yeah.
And they still show his video when you're going through the tour. He's still on that tour.
Hitchcock?
Which is crazy. Yeah.
I've never been to the California Universal, which is a goal of mine at some point. But
yeah,
well, you got things you need to make your girlfriend do. You can't blow through it all at once.
I live maybe 6 minutes away from it.
Okay.
And I got a season pass just because I was like, if I go twice, it's worth it. You know. And there was one night during the summer where I didn't have any food in the house, and I said, well, I'll just go get a Krusty Burger and ride the Universal tour. And that's exactly what I did, and then I went home. And it was worth it.
That's... I listen, even me, don't like theme parks at all.
Mhm.
I can't argue with that logic.
No, it's fun.
That's one of the most on-brand things I think you've ever said on this show.
It's also something I don't know if I've ever said publicly.
Exclusive.
Uh-huh.
All right, we got to get in contact with the rap.
No. Since this is a George Lucas talk show guy, it's all Deadline, right? That's your bit, right?
We like Deadline.
Always doing fake Deadline
yes.
headlines.
The rap's small potatoes.
Obviously, of course.
And one time, you guys got reported on a German news site. Remember that?
No.
You guys were doing the Comic-Con live show, right?
Uh-huh.
The very first Comic-Con live show, and I was there. And at the time, I was writing for a comic book website.
Yeah.
And Connor decided to say, everybody, when you leave here today, say that you heard at New York Comic-Con that Star Wars Detours is being released at Christmas. So I tweeted it, and a bunch of people tweeted it, and then some German news site picked it up and quoted my tweet by saying, noted comic book journalist Mike Natale says he was at Comic-Con and heard George... And I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. We haven't gotten in trouble for something like that yet, but I can absolutely see getting an email from somebody being like, you can't do that. You know? We're still okay, but who knows?
Well, we're so happy to have you, Patrick. We're so happy to be doing this. Before we get into any of the statement or anything else, I just want to talk about, you had the full list of titles in front of you. You're the only person who gets the full list of titles.
Yeah.
We don't really have a choice. You kind of just say it. We don't even get to give it to you. You just
it's
look.
Up to me. It's not up to you.
Yeah. What made you settle on Psycho, and what is kind of your relationship to the Hitchcock oeuvre overall?
Yeah. I love Psycho. I love the whole franchise. I think I was not up to date on Bates Motel, and I haven't seen the Bates Motel pilot from the 80s with Bud Cort. I
wasn't sure anybody here but me knew about that one. We will get into that one. I watched that.
Yeah.
It's
I
weird.
knew about it.
Have not seen it, but
I haven't watched it.
I've seen all 5 of the main movies and maybe season 1 of Bates Motel. It was a movie.
Have you seen the oatmeal commercial?
No.
Technically, there's a 5th film in the franchise because Anthony Perkins did play Norman Bates in what I'm pretty sure is like a 30-second oatmeal commercial.
Woof. I mean, I have seen his SNL episode where I think he does it again, so we could just keep going down the list here. I think I saw it in high school for the first time, I want to say, and it was one of those movies where, as a film studies student, you just have to watch that goddamn movie probably 12 times throughout all of your classes, so, like, I feel like I wrote, like, 6 half-assed papers about it. You know, I've seen it so many times. I saw it at the Village East Cinema last year. Or no, I guess it was 2 years ago at this point. On Halloween, they were playing it in a nice big room, and it was very cool. It's just a movie that I watch a lot. I feel like I've read a lot about, and I like talking about it. And I think all of the sequels, I feel like, have at least one good thing in it, and I like how different they all feel. Even if they're not all good, I think they're interesting, and I like that he's in all of them. You know what I mean? I think that adds a little bit, an air of legitimacy, even if they're not great. I think Psycho 2 is actually pretty good.
I think Psycho 2 is actually really good. Psycho 3, I said to Mike, it's kind of what everyone assumed Psycho 2 would be.
Yeah.
The sleazy, dumbass 80s slasher movie.
Yeah.
But it's got such a weird energy to it, and it's got Jeff Fahey being just such a weird guy, where you just go, I can't look away. Yeah. There's something... and it's Anthony Perkins directing, so it's just like this weird, like, him looking at the most iconic thing he ever did that almost destroyed his career, but he's directing it now. And we were joking about Psycho 4. He's in it, so there is that. So you do have...
And I think he's pretty good in it. Like, he's not in the movie a ton, but, like, I think he's actually doing something fun in it, you know?
There is, like... it's like we could talk about Psycho 4 a lot, but like there is something like he does find like the sadness inherent in the storyline they give him, which is basically just the wraparound where he's basically like, oh, I'm gonna admit everything on a radio show, and I forget, does he like kill himself or whatever?
No,
I don't know. There's like
I just watched it last night.
Yeah.
The premise of the film, he actually gets a lot to do in the end. The premise of the film is he gets on this radio show hosted by CGH Pounder, who's wondering how many more errands they have us running for the DA. And he's on the phone with her. And I texted Tom last night, I can't watch her anymore without picturing Glenn Howerton doing the impression.
Well, you think it's bad. I grew up watching The Shield. As it aired, I was 11 years old until I was 18 when that show ended. And then getting to that episode of It's Always Sunny and just being like, oh, wow, I thought I was the only one.
So she, she's on the phone, and Norman's calling in under a fake name initially and saying, like, I have to kill again. And we find out he's now out of the hospital. He is married to a psychologist. She's pregnant with his child, and he has to kill her, he feels, because he doesn't want his evil to go on. But it ends with him taking her to the house, though I believe not the California house. I think this one was in Orlando.
Yeah.
And he takes her to the house, but then decides, no, I'm actually going to burn down the house. And there is, to Perkins's credit, there is you can feel a bit of catharsis that, as dopey as this movie is, he's viewing this ending as, great, I get to put this behind me. Now, unfortunately, he will pass not that long afterward, but
he finds something in what they like. The rest of them, I mean, even the stuff he's in is not good. Like it's still a movie directed by Mick Garris, and then you have everything else in the movie, which is just honestly, it feels like an 80s TV pilot. Like, I mean, that's kind of like what plagues most of Garris's stuff. But you like Pat said, every one of these movies has something, and in this one, it's him finding an emotionality that I don't think would have been there if they had to. I mean, they did recast it with a younger Norman Bates, and that kid didn't find it, and I think he grew up into a really good actor. What the stuff he does with Flanagan, these days is really good. But yeah, Perkins, he's a good guy, good fella.
I will say, by the way, you're saying, oh, that could have been an 80s TV pilot. I promise you, neither of you are prepared for what the fuck Bates Motel 1987 is.
I don't know why I've never watched it. Like, it feels so up my alley. Mike, I feel like you know what my alley is, and it feels so up my alley that I don't know why I've put it off. And I feel like either tonight or tomorrow I'm going to watch it.
So it's Bud Cort, it's Lori Petty. There is also an appearance toward the end by a young Jason Bateman.
Okay.
Of course.
I don't want to spoil too much.
Yeah.
But I will say, if you think that this movie is going to this made-for-TV movie, this pilot is going to involve murders at the hotel, you're going to be disappointed. If you think that this movie is going to be, I'm not joking, 50% Bud Cort and Lori Petty renovating a hotel partially in montage, you are going to be a happy camper, my friend.
They're very vague in the California Universal if the Psycho house that is here is still the house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They keep it very vague, and it's very confusing because, like, there have been so many fires there, and then they move. I think they moved the house to Orlando for that movie and maybe moved it back, but it's all very, like, they want you to believe that it's the original house, and I'm not 100% sure that it is.
Patrick, I don't think the Universal Theme Park Company would ever be shady about a fire on their property. There's no instance ever where there would ever be anything shady about a fire.
I just want to know, because if you're driving by it, you want to be like, well, I'm not going to take a picture of this if it's bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, just tell me if it's the real guy or if you had to recreate it.
Yeah, don't do like our parents who all took pictures of the definitely fake Casablanca plane at Disney MGM. Right?
Yes.
Remember how we all... The fucking... No, you don't have the Casablanca plane.
Do you know about this?
No, I don't.
Oh, you're talking to Tom? No.
Yeah.
Tom does not know theme parks.
Tom,
No.
at the Great Movie Ride in MGM in Florida, you go through all different scenes from Wizard of Oz, Singing in the Rain, blah 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 blah, and you go through Casablanca
Alien,
and
Unforgiven.
Alien, yeah, all these movies that Disney did not own, and was very confusing as to why the ride stayed there as long as it did, because they were paying so much money to use all of these things. But then you go through Casablanca, and it's the scene by the plane, in the fog and whatever, and I don't know if they ever officially told us or if it was just a rumor that got out of control, but they were like, that's the real plane. That plane back there, that's the real plane from the movie. And everyone's like, oh, cool. Okay. Because they're setting you up to be like, this is the movies. We bought all these props to like put around the park so you could see real props from real movies. And then a couple of years ago, I feel like, was when everyone was like, no, that's not the real plane. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, because that park only opens because Eisner had gotten wind of they're going to build a Universal Orlando.
Yeah.
And was like, oh, I guess we could build a movie park too.
Mm-hmm.
And then insists, like, because the crazy thing, I was reading up on one of the actresses from Psycho 4. The girl who first shows up to Norman, the first girl he kills, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, she's got some energy. What happened to this person?
Sure.
And apparently she just does like local community theater in Baltimore now. And she did like one interview, and in that interview she talked about, well, because we filmed it in Orlando, because this was like that brief period where everybody thought Orlando was going to be the Hollywood of the East.
Mm-hmm.
Because Universal was there, and Disney opened MGM Studios, and they were supposed to be real production facilities, right? Even though the second most notable thing to film at Disney MGM Studios was Hulk Hogan's Thunder in Paradise. And the first most is the only theme park adjacent thing that Tom cares about. Do you know about what filmed at MGM Studios, Patrick?
Isn't it Bette Midler's Big Business?
Well, that's not something Tom would care about.
No, I know. That's why I was confused.
WCW.
Huh? Oh, yeah.
WCW, like one of the early episodes of WCW, after they did the show at the mall, actually shows just like Hulk Hogan arriving at Disney MGM Studios and like high-fiving Eric Bischoff and stuff. And like, yeah, a lot of WCW was filmed at Disney MGM Studios. So go onto your Peacock subscription, and when Hogan drops the leg on Macho Man Randy Savage, just know that the Great Movie Ride is going on somewhere in the distance.
I mean, that definitely brings a whole new feeling when you watch old WCWs. I feel like Patrick would love knowing that the first WCW Monday Night Nitro was filmed at the Mall of America.
Great.
It's so weird.
It's just a ring in the middle of a mall.
Amazing.
And it's like, it's one of the weirdest things you'll ever, because they didn't shut down the mall.
No. Yeah. People are just shopping.
People are shopping. And Hulk Hogan's just doing things.
I do also feel like we are beating around the bush, and we are not even mentioning that there is an actual murderer in Psycho 4.
Who's in Psycho? What?
Mike Calavecchio. Remember the character Mike Calavecchio, Mike?
Yeah.
Played by John Landis.
Oh.
All right. That's a thing Garrus loves to do. Throw fucking Landis
what's so funny?
Stuff.
What's so funny about that is I'm watching this last night. I see Landis show up. I have the thought, should I make a joke about Landis's body count? And then I thought to myself, maybe I shouldn't, because if I do that, Patrick might go, that might make problems for me. I don't know if I should joke about that. And then I forgot about it, and you brought it right in. So
no problems.
And second time we're talking about, well, technically we recorded it months ago, but talk about Landis in the Sleepwalkers episode, because
we do. Yeah,
Landis shows up in Sleepwalkers.
He does.
It's a thing Garrus just loves to do. Hey, I'm friends with John Landis. Do you want to admit that, Mick? Do you?
So we've talked Psycho 4. We've talked Bates Motel. We should probably talk Psycho.
Bates Motel, the show, is actually good. Just while we're still on this, it gets. I hate being that guy that's like with all TV shows. Everyone's like, "Oh, it gets good a few seasons in," but it actually does legitimately get really good. The more like the weird bullshit they start whittling off, like it tries to be Twin Peaks for a while with like,
Yeah.
ooh, look at all the crazy shit that's going on in this small town. The more they start whittling that off, and it's just about Freddie Highmore and Vera Farmiga, you just go, oh, this is what the show should have been the whole time. And it's really good. And it kind of gets to a thing like rewatching it, the Psycho today, where the creators of the show were like, yeah, why would anyone think that what Norman's saying is true about his mother? Why would we think that? And the show kind of like uses that as the hook of like, no, Norma wasn't this crazy like freak woman who was obsessed with the son. She knew her son was crazy and was doing her best to make sure he didn't go fucking crazy and kill anybody, and that's why she was kind of hovering all the time, which I thought was pretty smart. Good show. Not great, but it's pretty good for all things.
Now,
it's
I will say, Patrick talked about his first time seeing Psycho and Hitchcock. Tom, when was your first time? I'll get into mine in a second, but when was your first time seeing Psycho, if you recall?
Oh boy, it must have been like Patrick in high school at some point. Because in our film school, the Hitchcock we watched every fucking semester, like 3 times, was the 39 Steps. Yep. It wasn't Psycho, but it was the 39 Steps. But I'm pretty sure I saw Psycho in high school, and even when I was that young film school jerk that was like, "Ooh, Hitchcock's overrated," but I do like Psycho because I was a jerk. I still am, but a different flavor of jerk now. And I really liked it then, and it's a movie I go back to a lot. Like Patrick, it's just so easily watchable, and you always kind of like find something new every time you watch it. It's just, there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of like great filmmaking and layers to it. But it's honestly like it's just such an easy movie to kind of just sit back and just like kind of just zone out and just let it happen to you. Like you don't, it's not like North by Northwest where there's like, that movie has like 3 or 4 pit stops where a character has to explain what has happened to you the prior 30 minutes. This is a movie where you're just like, okay, yeah, this guy, this mom's killing people. Okay. Oh no, it's him. Whoa. Okay. Yeah. Now the psychiatrist is, oh, it's over. Great. Awesome. Yeah. Love that.
I saw it earlier than high school. I'm actually surprised. I would have put money, Patrick, that you would have had the same Psycho origin story that I do.
Yeah.
Which is, my mom used to take me to Blockbuster a lot. And when I was a kid, probably like late elementary school, early middle school, I got very into Mel Brooks. Right? As one does. It's like you have your Monty Python phase and then you get into Mel Brooks. So I got very into Mel Brooks. And we kind of had this thing where if I watched one of his parodies, we would just watch the other stuff, right?
Sure.
I'd already seen like Young Frankenstein and Star Wars, Spaceballs, that kind of thing.
Have you seen Frankenstein? Regular Frankenstein?
Yeah, we did that on the podcast last season.
Patrick. I just remember talking about Bounty Hunter. I'm sorry.
As one would. I mean, it's the most important thing we talked about in that episode.
You ask anybody else, Patrick just thinks this is a Star Wars podcast.
Yeah, I don't know.
Has not been corrected yet. So we rented High Anxiety, the Mel Brooks spoof of all the Hitchcock movies, and I must have been like 10 or 11 years old. And I had not seen the Hitchcock films.
Sure.
I was aware of Psycho, but so then we just went and got like every Hitchcock film that was referenced in High Anxiety. So I saw Psycho very young. I must have been like 11 or 12 or something like that.
It's funny you say like, you were aware of Psycho at the time. It's funny because I remember when the remake was coming out. And it was 98, so like, and I was 8 years old. I didn't have like anybody telling me what this is, or like going on the internet to find out what it is and what this history is and the shot for shot gimmick of it all. So I just remember the AMC Levittown having the big cutout of the poster and just being like, what is this? And seeing like the TV spots and all of that. And then honestly, I didn't see it even when we were getting bootlegs all the time because my dad was a sanitation officer in Brooklyn, so got bootlegs all the time. Never got the movie was just in and out of my head until probably high school when I started getting into this stuff. When we had the internet, I could start picking stuff up on my own.
Sure. And
then finally getting to that remake and going, oh boy,
it's funny.
Quite the movie if you ever wanted to see Vince Vaughn jerk off.
Tom, you're mentioning when you mentioned your dad, it did remind me. So I actually had Psycho spoiled for me before I ever saw it. Because, and again, this is a niche topic. Patrick, you may know what I'm talking about. I will say your George Lucas talk show co-host Griffin Newman will absolutely know what I'm talking about here.
Sure.
Todd McFarlane did a run of toys called Movie Maniacs back in the day that were like horror movie characters, right? He did Freddy, he did Jason, Leatherface, infamously did a Blair Witch figure. Have you ever seen that, Tom? The Todd McFarlane Blair Witch figure?
Yeah, you've made me look at that thing many times.
Have you seen it, Patrick? Todd McFarlane wanted to make a Blair Witch figure. And so he was like, I'm just going to show you what I think the Blair Witch is. Right? So, and it was all horror movie characters except for one. We'll get into that in a second. But one of them was Norman Bates in the dress and the wig. Right? And so my dad used to like put the figures in the window on Halloween. I asked who the guy in the dress with the knife was. And he said, that's Norman Bates from Psycho. He dresses up like his mom and kills people. Because my dad just assumed that like an 8-year-old knows these things.
Or would forget.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that this was not a twist to me when I actually saw it. Fun fact about that toy line, Movie Maniacs. That's what it was called, right?
Yeah.
All movie monsters. He did, I think, a pretty cool looking Renfield figure. That was like his reimagined Renfield. He did the the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and it was very cool.
I did just Google a Blair Witch one, and it truly would make that movie so much worse if that was in the movie.
But so he did all that. One of the characters in the Movie Maniacs toy line is Shaft. Samuel L. Jackson's Shaft.
Obviously.
Because he wanted to do a separate line of like action stars. And like he had molds for like John McClane and Rambo, and then he couldn't get the rights for anybody but the Samuel L. Jackson Shaft. So now that figure came out and it was just branded Movie Maniacs and was in the same line as like The Predator. Shit. It's really weird. And like Chucky and shit.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
It's honestly perfect that it's the Sam Jackson one too.
Yeah.
And not even like the iconic one. It's the one where they just like, hey, remember Shaft? And he's like, stuck it to the man and all that. Yeah. Well, what if his nephew was a cop? And you go,
is it nephew? It's not even son.
Yeah, it's
not even his son. It's his nephew.
Oh,
yeah.
That's very funny.
Yeah. It's quite the movie. Probably Singleton's second best movie too, which is not a great thing to say. But
so anyway, that's Psycho. Now, before we get more into the film, let's talk about what the Library of Congress has to say.
More into the film? Do you mean get into it
into the film
at first?
All. Yeah.
We talked about the action figure.
Okay, that's fair.
Before we shift the ratio on this podcast from more Psycho 4 talk to more Psycho talk, let's hear what the Library of Congress had to say. Here is our social media manager, Amanda, telling us what the National Film Registry had to say about Psycho.
Suspenseful thriller by Alfred Hitchcock shocked audiences when it was released, and still manages to terrify viewers more than 50 years later. The film boosted the career of Anthony Perkins as the creepy Norman Bates, but subsequently stereotyped him as the damaged outsider. Portraying the doomed Marion Crane, Janet Leigh fared better, though she was constantly overshadowed by her role in the film and her experience with Hitchcock. The Bernard Herrmann score, rich with discordant strings, is spine-tinglingly unforgettable.
Now, the plan typically is that audio is going to play over some like stills showing the texture, but I'm wondering if I should just just only use the footage of Patrick dancing in his closet.
I like the music.
What if we... Thank you.
You could do a picture-in-picture.
I'm just going to take that footage and we're going to use that score from like when Joaquin is dancing in the bathroom in Joker. Just put that under it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's going to be where we go. So...
Yeah, do that, Mike.
Yeah.
Please.
That's sick.
Add more work to your life. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Psycho. We are talking about... I think that this is... The thing that I find interesting, and this might surprise you, Patrick, is that this is our third Hitchcock that we're talking about on the show. This is the third Hitchcock movie to get into the registry, right?
Yeah.
So I would love for you to guess if you know 2 movies were considered more of a priority from Hitchcock's oeuvre to make it in the registry before Psycho. What would you guess they were?
And they didn't have to. I guess a lot of his stuff came out before this. I'm just thinking of like, was there a year cutoff, or it doesn't matter?
No, because I mean, 1989, the 10-year period. So basically, in the very first year, 1979 would have been the cutoff. So he had made everything by then. So
I'm gonna say Rope, and I'm gonna say Marnie.
The thing is,
really not Topaz.
The thing is, the actual answer might surprise you. So the first year was Vertigo.
Sure,
not surprising.
A movie I don't like.
Really?
I think it's boring. I've never liked it. I've watched it so many times thinking maybe this is the one time when I'll get into it, and it truly never happens.
I wouldn't go as far as Patrick, but we did get into it where I like it. I don't think it's like the number one movie of all time. That like it is like there's like maybe 10 more Hitchcock movies I like more than Vertigo.
It's no Jean Dielman, obviously.
Well, nothing is other than my real life.
The rightful number one on the Sight and Sample. So Vertigo number 1, which by the way, Patrick, I want to note, this is now the second podcast in a row where you have declared a canonical work of art boring.
What was the first one?
You don't recall that you? We have the audio of you going, I read Frankenstein over the pandemic.
Sure.
And I have to say it was boring.
I agree.
And then proceeded to say, sorry, Mary Shelley. How about get a little more practice under your belt before you write a book next time?
You know what? I stand by it. She's been dead long enough that she's not going to come after me, you know?
Hey, listen, he's not wrong.
I'm not wrong.
He's not
right.
He's not wrong.
This is the half of the podcast where Tom and Patrick get along. If you guys don't like that, skip ahead to the second half. It's gonna get real tense. So Vertigo, and then in the third year of the registry, Shadow of a Doubt. Yeah,
I don't know if I've seen Shadow of a Doubt.
It's if you like Joseph Cotten, you're gonna have a good time.
Sure. Okay.
But we were perplexed by that even on the episode. We like Shadow of a Doubt, but just like it's so interesting that they go that.
Yeah, like more than Psycho was
before Psycho, before Rear Window, before Rebecca, before
Jamaica Inn.
Before Jamaica Inn, before Number 17.
The damn birds. Give me the damn birds.
Right ahead of Juno and the Paycock. We're all just...
Frenzy,
We did this same bit on Shadow of a Doubt to see how many obscure Hitchcock titles we could remember. He's got so many.
It's too much, some might argue.
I do sometimes wonder if Hitchcock's place in the canon falls because he... Like Kubrick, you're like, hey, most of the movies Kubrick made masterpieces. Hitchcock, if you're like, I'm going to go through this entire filmography, there are so many movies.
It's like John Ford or Howard Hawks, where you just go like, oh, right, he was a worker.
Yeah.
Like, we kind of tend to think of Hitchcock as this early auteur doing his own thing, but it's like, no, this man just did work. And sometimes he cared, and sometimes he didn't. As he, got into it with Truffaut in that interview. It was just like, nah, that was just a job. Wrong man was just like, no.
I was about to say, the wrong man.
Yeah.
Truffaut asks him so many questions about the wrong man, and Hitchcock's just like, I don't care. I don't remember doing it. Whatever.
It was a job.
It makes sense. Also, a lot of those early movies he probably shot in like 6 days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where he's like, I don't know, it's 1928. I'm going to make a movie in 4 hours. Like, it's done. I don't care about it anymore.
But yeah, so Psychophazing, I think, I will say, and I don't know about you guys, when I've obviously seen it plenty of times before, but when I rewatched it, it is remarkable how well it still hits, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Even though the Saul Bass credits, the Bernard Herrmann score, like right from the jump, that thing still lands with a punch.
Yeah. It's right from the jump, and it is almost fitting that this is, honestly, in my opinion, his last good movie. Not even like great. Like, this is a great movie, but he doesn't even make, in my opinion, a good movie after this. I don't like The Birds. Topaz is kind of like, all right, great, Marnie, hey, Sean Connery's in a movie that's not James Bond. Cool. Yeah. Frenzy sucks. Family Plot's bad. This is like, if you're gonna make like one final great movie, I mean, yeah, this is like the one to go out on. Honestly, it's so good. I really, it's one of those movies. I don't even know what to say really about it. Like, it's just Psycho. It's just good. I texted Mike before when I was rewatching it. It's so funny that Reanimator just straight up steals the opening title sequence and the score. Straight up, the score is just Psycho. It's so funny. That's one of the great 80s. Just like, yeah, is Herman gonna sue us? He's dead. Let's just do it. Let's see what happens. And they got away with it. It's amazing.
Now, Patrick,
it's a good movie.
You seem to make some faces when Tom was dragging Hitchcock's filmography. Do you have some late period Hitchcocks that you like?
I saw Marnie in a theater and I really didn't like it. I like The Birds. I understand why you probably don't like it. Like, I get it. But I think it's fun and I like movies. It's a little, it feels like a B movie and I like that. Yeah. Not that like this one weirdly should feel more like a B movie and it doesn't,
Yeah, it should. It should
because it costs so little. They shot it on the with the TV crew. Like,
I was going to say, it was made with his crew from Alfred Hitchcock Presents, right?
Yeah. And it's probably his most textually sleazy movie.
Sure,
at least until Frenzy.
Until Frenzy, absolutely. Yeah. But like up until this point, all his weird kink shit is always just like subtext. Even Vertigo, it doesn't really get super sleazy. It's more like, okay, this is about a guy who dresses up like his mom to kill women that make him horny, and they say that's what is happening. Yeah. It's just like, oh no, when the doctor goes up to the sister at the end, it's like, your sister made him horny, and that's why he killed her. Just like, whoa, this is 1960.
And also we should acknowledge that scene is the worst scene in the movie.
Well, yes. But also, I kind of love it for the shit like that. We're just like, wow, we're just straight up saying this man got so horny he had to turn into his mom to kill his boner.
That's not even the one that throws me, because at least then there's a little obfuscating. I was thrown watching it even this time when they go, so he dresses like so he's a transvestite. No, a transvestite would be, and you're just like, wow, we're getting into this.
Yeah,
like
we're getting ahead of the Silence of the Lambs controversy before Silence of the Lambs.
I didn't watch the movie normally this time. I watched it with commentary just because I'm like, I've seen this so many times. Like, let me just listen to someone else talk about it, and he was talking about how they were trying to make it more overtly incestuous, and the censors were like, you can't do that.
Yeah, there was like a 6-part podcast called Inside Psycho that I didn't love. It makes some weird choices, but there was some interesting information within it. One of it I really didn't appreciate until I was listening to it, kind of the context in which this movie emerges. Patrick, you said something about it should feel more like a B movie, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people talk about Psycho feeling inspired in part by the rise of guys like William Castle and their B movies. But another factor I hadn't considered is that Hitchcock isn't just responding to the William Castles. He's also responding to the influx of European films and the start of the French New Wave. And we talk about Francois Truffaut, like 400 Blows is pretty recent. And that struck me because the fascinating thing with Psycho is when you watch it, and we have that opening scene of Marion Crane and Loomis in the bedroom. That's shot like a French New Wave movie. Like it's hit, like it looks like it looks like a Truffaut film, right? Like the shot choices of that or Godard, like it feels like Breathless. And it is kind of interesting to consider this movie in the context of, like, Patrick, what you said about the incestuous stuff being more overt and the censors. You do feel like Hitch isn't just doing that to be shocking, but he's also being like, in a sense, well, this is what the Europeans get to do, right? Like he's simultaneously trying to show up the William Castles of the world, right? But also be like, but let me be clear, I can do what these young whippersnappers do. And it makes me think of that anecdote about him and Spielberg and him being like, well, now I can't do that. Now I can't do it, but at the time he's trying.
It, especially when you take into the context of like, he was around long enough. We saw him make black and white movies. This is his first time back in black and white in a while. And it's very different than what he was doing beforehand. I mean, this is not shot like Rebecca or any or Shadow of a Doubt or anything like that. This is a very different feeling, and like right from the jump, feels like Truffaut or the French New Wave stuff, all of that. And again, getting back to what I was saying before, that it just starts right, just her and Loomis just had sex. There is no. Like, it's not like the ending of North by Northwest where they do the joke of the train going into the tunnel where it's like, oh, we're letting you know, but we're not letting you know. Mm-hmm. This is just straight up. She's in her underwear. Loomis is in his underwear. Straight up, they just had sex. And you're just like, wow, yeah, this is you're getting a new feeling here. This is, I don't know. It almost kind of reminds me of to jump off, Hitchcock feeling like he's got to go up against these young guys. It feels like when Wes Craven would talk about why he made Scream and how he was some kids came up to him and they said, when are you going to make a movie that's scary again? And he went, okay, fuck. Well, I guess I got to do that movie Kevin Williamson wrote because I need to show these kids I still got it. And like Scream, Scream feels so much different than everything else Wes did before, even if it feels like a Wes Craven movie. This feels like a guy who really wants to prove something. And he did. This is, I mean...
what we're trying to say is, Alfred, you made a good movie. Good job, buddy. We're all very proud of you.
Enjoy all of that food in heaven. We know you're eating a lot. This isn't me being a fat phobic jerk. Every story about meeting Alfred Hitchcock is he had like 3 whole hams. He had 10 gallons of coffee. He
and cigars. Dude loved cigars.
Yeah.
Apparently, the one thing I was reading was that the guy playing Loomis was having a hard time feeling like cozy or intimate in his hotel scene with Marion. And like Hitchcock was like, what are you doing? Come on, like, you should want to. This guy's a stiff. And the actor playing Loomis was essentially like, there's a rotund man blowing cigar smoke in my face, feet away from me, while I am not dressed. This is not a comfortable experience. Like, because Hitch was just knocking him back while shooting that. And apparently. Yeah.
What an absolute...
It does make me sad, though, that we're like, oh, this is his last really good movie, and then he lived literally 20 more years.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
It is a bummer.
And it's not like he stopped working,
No, he made, what, like 5-6 movies after this, I think is the count, something like that, and there was like a big gap in the 70s, and they were like, oh, he's making Frenzy, he's back to shake up horror again, and you watch and you go, oh, boy. This is... I remember telling Mike when I watched Frenzy for the first time, and the rape scene happened, and it's so badly shot, I didn't realize it was supposed to be a rape scene until later in the movie. They were like, oh, he raped that girl. And I go, he did? Sure. Yeah. When did that happen?
That's the thing. Psycho feels like I wouldn't even say, and I don't like The Birds, but I wouldn't even talk about, it's his last good movie. But it does feel like Psycho is the last time he has his finger on the pulse. Because The Birds was a hit. It made money. The effects are revolutionary, right? But The Birds feels like a guy trying to keep up, right? Sure. Psycho is, even though he's like, again, lifting from Castle, lifting from the French New Wave, Psycho feels like he is setting a trend rather than trying to keep up. And everything else afterward feels like trying to keep up.
Well, which is interesting because... go ahead.
No,
no. You please.
No, I was just gonna say it's interesting because like you see him in this, and you're or when he's making this, and you're like, he's an old man. He's an old man here, and then he just actively gets so much older the next 20 years, where you're like, oh, he's a really old man now. But even when he's making this, it's not like he's the prime of his life, at this point. Like he's already past that.
I mean, that's like we were talking about the whole Universal Studios thing with Hitchcock. when you see Hitchcock do those commercials for like Universal Orlando, and he's talking about, well, the $6 million man, your brain breaks because you're just like, you two shouldn't exist in the same time.
Yeah.
Alfred, it's like when you find out H.G. Wells reviewed Metropolis. You're like, those two things didn't happen in the same time frame.
Yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock shouldn't know who the $6 million man is.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Salvador
make sense.
Dali shouldn't have been able to see Tron.
Yes, exactly. Like, these are all things.
Not to bring it back, Alec Guinness could have seen Phantom Menace, you know?
Yeah. Which, by the way, in case you forgot, on Frankenstein, Patrick, you measured people's ages in that film and how long they lived by which Star Wars they could have seen.
I don't remember that at all, but that sounds right.
You were just... It's a part where you're just like, that guy could have lived to see Empire Strikes Back. Now that little girl in there could have lived to see Attack of the Clones. And then, the lead actor died tragically young. It's such a weird...
Colin Clive had a rough go. Had a rough go.
Even rougher, he couldn't see Star Wars.
By the way, speaking of rough goes, as did Anthony Perkins. I did a deep dive into his life and career, and that was a bummer.
As did Anthony Perkins' wife. Did you get that deep dive in?
Wait, hang on. I know that I know about his conversion therapy and everything. What happened to his wife?
I want to get the details right. Okay. Hang on one second.
Well, while Patrick looks that up, just to give a little context before he gets in, Osgood Perkins, his son, has a new horror movie coming out. And in an interview with Nick Cage, who is in the movie, Nick Cage said, "It feels like Oz is making a movie about his mother and working through what she was like. So I based my performance off of his feelings of his mother and my mother. So I feel like we're not going to get some great info right now."
Wait, which
Here we go.
Is this Longlegs?
Yes.
That's Osgood Perkins. I had no idea.
Yes.
Bonnie Berenson married Anthony Perkins in 1973. She was with him all the way until he died in 1992. And then, unfortunately, Bonnie Berenson died because she was a passenger on American Airlines Flight 11 on September 11th, 2001.
That's right. I knew that. Oh, my God. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry to bring it up.
Not a surprise that Osgood Perkins is making horror movies these days.
Yeah. Well, Anthony Perkins, I think, is fascinating, if just because, obviously, we all know him as Norman Bates, and he got typecast as Norman Bates. Do you know, Patrick, like the big missed opportunity in Perkins' career?
I don't.
I believe, I don't know how far along it went, but obviously he had a connection to the composer. Anthony Perkins was supposed to be the lead in Company.
Oh, yeah.
And that would have changed his entire trajectory.
I mean, he's so good.
Yeah.
He is.
And it's a real bummer.
And when you see him in, like, not just the Psycho sequels, but, like, he got a few, like, like Sidney Lumet got him in Murder on the Orient Express. Like, there was a few times where, like, he'd get a chance to break out. And he's really good in that thing, but that movie wasn't like, it didn't manage to break him out of the hole, or the movie didn't succeed or whatever. And you just go, man, I feel so bad for this guy because he's always good. I just watched The Trial, Orson Welles' movie a few weeks ago, and he's amazing in that. He completely gets what he's in. He's got the Kafkaesque feel down to a T. And you got to ask yourself, like, is he maybe the ultimate example of like that kind of typecasting tragedy story of just like he was so connected to Norman Bates, he was kind of really never able to break out of it again?
And there's the added element of the fact that like even before Psycho, the studio was trying to man him up by putting him in movies with women to try and like heterosexualize him. Meanwhile, he's having a relationship with Stephen Sondheim, like he was, he was a gay man. Then he gets Psycho, and the discourse around Psycho and what we were supposed to glean from Psycho at the time. Remember, at the time Psycho comes out, homosexuality is still in the DSM, right? Like there were a lot of people who had a lot of reads on that, and so that even stigmatizes it more. And so by the time I believe the 70s roll around, Perkins actually puts himself in conversion therapy, which was just, I mean, bad any time, to be clear. But 70s,
sure,
probably real bad. Probably somehow even worse. So, and he just had a nightmarish time after that, which is really a shame. You mentioned he's good in that. He's great in Friendly Persuasion, the Palme d'Or winning film about like pacifists during a war. He's tremendous in that. And it's interesting that he's in this because he actually is not, if you go by the book, he's not right for the role at all. The Robert Bloch book describes Norman Bates. He's older.
He's like older and pudgy and
he's heavy
shorter,
set.
right?
Yeah, he looks nothing like that. And so the story goes, Hitchcock cast Perkins because Anthony Perkins and his friend like to make prank phone calls on people. And Hitchcock was invited to hear some of those recorded prank phone calls, and Perkins used to do an old lady voice, and he was like, "Ha, that's my guy."
Anthony Perkins, the original jerky boy.
There we go.
I was just going to say the jerky boys.
Yeah. He used to. So apparently one of the calls, they talk about it on the Psycho podcast, is that they would just call up Hollywood stars. I think one of Marion Davies. And he just called up Marion Davies and would just keep going, "Marion, it's Estelle. We met at that party. We met Marion. It's Estelle." And he was just like, you know me. You know. So that was how.
Obviously, that's how you cast Norman Bates. Yeah. Obviously,
yeah,
the famously sociable who knows how to talk to everybody, little man.
We met at Martha's Vineyard. So it's
he's so perfect in this, and it would be it would be wrong to do the kind of stereotypical serial killer, like, oh, he's a pudgy old like weird fat guy thing, like making him this kind of like clean cut, like lanky, very polite boy. I mean, it helps sell the twist, but it also makes the horror more, horrific. It's the Halloween thing. It's that, oh, it's just this boy from down the block. Like, he's not some weird kid who was, burning cats in a back alley. It's just a little boy. And it's like, no, look, it's Norman Bates. He's this sweet little boy. He just needs to get away from his mother, but he's so sweet. And it's just,
and there's no other reason that Alfred Hitchcock would want to make sure that you don't think that a pudgy balding man who has issues with his mom would terrorize women.
No, absolutely not.
No other reason.
Imagine if he cast himself.
I mean, imagine if he cast Orson.
Oh,
I just read in that oral history of Dune, when they were casting the Lynch one, they called Orson to try to get him as Baron Harkonnen. And they said, "Do you want to play Baron Harkonnen?" And they said, the only thing he said was, "You want me to play the floating fat man?" And then just hung up on them.
I get it.
I get it. Hey, Orson, I get it. I don't blame you, Orson.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
And all things considered, not the worst thing he could have done to them. Very savage man when he wanted to be. So they got off lucky.
Have either of you guys read the Psycho novel?
No, but I've always meant to, just because I know it's different. Okay. And also because I want to give myself an excuse to read Psycho 2, which is
not
completely different. Yeah, not even close to the movie. So, like a meta thing about somebody's making a movie based on Norman's life and all this shit, and you're just like, what the fuck was this guy on when he wrote this book?
I haven't read Psycho 2, the book, but it sounds like Psycho 2 is Robert Bloch working through his own frustrations at the fact that he got real screwed on this movie.
Yeah.
Because he sold the book rights for cheap because he didn't know any better. He was a fledgling novelist.
And Hitchcock bought it anonymously.
Yes. And he was a fledgling writer because Robert G. Bloch, I didn't realize, was a protege of H.P. Lovecraft, which is interesting. They were friendly. Bloch's book, you can tell he was a friend of H.P. Lovecraft because other than Norman being pudgy, there is one other key difference.
Oh boy.
So the movie tries to throw you off the scent by not revealing that Mrs. Bates is dead until like the very end, right? The book,
we're so nervous,
still reveals that the book reveals that she's dead a little sooner, right? So you're probably sitting here wondering, well, why? Wait, but she's dead, but she's been talking to Norman, right? And he's, we know that. Oh no, he dug up her corpse and all that. But how is she talking to Norman? Well, of course, Though it ultimately concludes with he's psychopathic, right? It ultimately concludes with that. They try and throw you off the scent because Norman has a lot of books about witchcraft. Norman is a practicing warlock, you see. And Norman...
Oh my god.
Doesn't...
I gotta read this damn book!
Norman doesn't think he absorbed his mother. Norman believes that he used magic to bring her back to life, and the book wants you as the reader to go, did Norman Bates use magic to bring his mother back?
I'm looking for the book right now on eBay.
Okay, see, also, you I can't properly process this information because you set it up with, as a friend of Lovecraft, and I go, oh no, what racist shit are we about to hear right now?
So, and this is nice because at least in recording order, we just did Double Indemnity, where, Patrick, you know Double Indemnity, right? Do you know how the book ends?
Yes. No.
They throw themselves to sharks to die.
Oh, cool.
Because like the comic book version of Thanos, Barbara Stanwyck's character is obsessed with death and wants to meet and become death.
So this has been fun to kind of do back-to-back. What a weird ending for these movies. For these books that these movies are on. So yes, Norman loves witchcraft. He's obsessed with witchcraft. He dug up his mom's body with the idea that he could use special powers to bring her back to life. Like, so he doesn't.
Honestly, they should have reintroduced this in Psycho 3.
He doesn't think they're in the same body. He just maintains. He's like, no. See, my mother, she did die, but I used my magic spells to bring her back.
I mean, that feels like such a Halloween 5 ass thing to do, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Way late in the franchise, they're like, oh, also there's warlocks here.
I have been sitting on Norman Bates' Wizard as a fun fact for months now. I didn't tell Tom because I'm like, I gotta wait till we're on mic. I had to.
I'm on eBay, and Robert Bloch apparently edited a book of short stories, and it's called Psycho-Paths, but Paths is very small, and it just says edited by Robert Bloch, but the edited is very small, and I'm like, what is this book now? Is this podcast going to cost me $50 because I'm going to buy his entire bibliography?
Honestly, can I say that is a more fitting tribute to Shyster William Castle than anything Hitchcock did in Psycho. It's that beautiful tricking people into buying what they think is Psycho move. I like it. I do want to point out one thing that's crazy.
Wait a second. Sorry. Okay. I almost just bought a copy of the book before I noticed it was called Psychos, which was edited by Robert Bloch. It's a different book of short stories that he also edited.
What an incredible Shyster.
Insane. I love that. Good for him.
That is
hucksterism to the extreme. We love it. We need more of that energy in Hollywood today.
Can I say, I'm amazed that H.P. Lovecraft talked to Robert Bloch at all, because what Robert Bloch is doing is some of the most Italian shit I've ever seen in my life, and we know H.P. Lovecraft is not on board for that, so we know.
No.
Man, hated
He would have used some witchcraft powers.
Almost. He Lovecraft hated Italians almost as much as the author of Double Indemnity, but that's a different podcast.
That guy hated Greeks more than he hated Italians.
Greeks, Italians. No, Tom, he uses the W word in his books a lot.
Yeah, but he doesn't spend a lot of time saying why this dirty fat Greek needs to die because he's a dirty fat Greek. No, he does nothing wrong. He's just a Greek, and that's why he needs to die.
Postman Always Rings Twice is such a weird book. Now,
it's a fucking crazy book.
With Robert Bloch, and this is what I think is kind of fascinating. So Robert Bloch, we all know his inspiration for the book, right? That becomes the inspiration for the movie. Is Ed Gein, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the most, I mean, now I wouldn't say he's the most famous serial killer, but like he's definitely the story that shocked America, right?
Also probably one of the most imitated in fiction serial killers, you know?
Yeah.
And
when you count
in
Texas
weird ways,
Chainsaw, Sounds of the Lambs, Psycho, like a lot. They got a lot of mileage out of good old Ed.
Well, because I think that Ed Gein and that story is so interesting, because I think it's maybe the first time that we had a story that was so psychosexual, right? Like that there was this it's not just that he kills, it's that he's obsessed with his mother. He's got the, he wears the dresses and the suit and the whatever. So Block was inspired by Ed Gein, but the thing that Block does that I think is very cool, and I wish more people did, is he kind of does the way P.T. Anderson describes how he writes Boogie Nights, which is, I kind of half remembered the story, filled in whatever I wanted, right? And reportedly there was stuff that Block wrote that was similar to portions of the Ed Gein story that had not been made public at that point. And he just later found out about some of that, some of the elements of the mother obsession and all that he just could not have known at the time. It all just worked out. But in the book, a lot of that stuff is still there. The taxidermy is still there, that kind of thing. Obviously, like I said, the key difference is Norman doesn't look like the Norman in the movie. And Norman doesn't, in the movie, believe in magic. But nevertheless, otherwise, sadly for all our sakes, I do think the shift to Anthony Perkins type is very interesting insofar as in the book, when Marion Crane arrives, she is only pitying of Norman, right?
Yeah.
I do think casting a traditionally handsome guy in the Norman Bates role and letting him be kind of quietly charming in the beginning can trick the audience into thinking maybe she's going to turn this kid around, right? Maybe she's going to, maybe she sees something in him. She's on the run. He's kind of sweet,
Well, it's important to selling her turn of going back to give the money back.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a lot easier for her to, I think in a movie, for her to kind of be charmed by him and see the error of her ways of oh, well, look at this kid. He's a sweet boy. He's clearly, there's clearly issues, but seems like such a good guy, caring about his invalid mother to the detriment of his own life. Okay, I guess I need to suck it up and go back home and try to make things right with everything. And you do buy it. I think when you rewatch it, it's so obvious that Norman is off his fucking rocker once you now have the information.
Yeah.
It's also funny because in the credits it's and Janet Leigh, and you go, well, that doesn't seem like she's the star of the movie. But it's
interesting. I never thought about that before. That's never rubbed me weird, and now it's all I'm ever going to think of when I watch this.
Right? Movie. I didn't think about it until this morning where I was like, she's casted as End. She's not the star of the movie.
Yeah.
I will also say there's another element. We talk about this sometimes in the pod, that there's certain elements of a movie that are lost to time, right? Mm-hmm. Jokes or references. I realized it on this watch. So remember that around this time, right, in the 50s, this is 1960, but in the 50s, a hugely popular book that became a hugely popular movie and then a TV show called Peyton Place was out. You guys, if I'm assuming, heard of Peyton Place, right?
We've all heard We Didn't Start the Fire.
I had a feeling that was coming. So Peyton Place, in Peyton Place, one of the key storylines in Peyton Place, it's about a mother and a daughter, mainly in this small town. The daughter is a fast girl, right? The daughter is partying with boys. The daughter is, I don't wait for marriage for sex. The daughter is, again, they call her a fast girl, right? And she ends up falling for, instead of any of the hot boys around town, this neighbor kid who lives near her, who is very shy, very awkward, uncomfortable around women because he has an extremely domineering mother who we almost never see, but we hear her yelling for him that he's late for dinner, for all of that. And this young girl in Peyton Place, she's going to turn this kid around. She falls for him. She's going to redeem this young boy, whatever, right?
Is it a sitcom?
It became a TV series, yeah.
But was it like a drama or was it?
I have no idea. I've never watched.
I don't
know
either.
Okay. I know that it was a show. I've been watching the movie because it's comes up in a future episode. But so
primetime soap opera.
Okay, so it makes sense. Yeah, because that movie is just a soap opera of a movie. But anyway, it did strike me that when you're sitting in the audience for Psycho, Peyton Place is a huge hit. The dynamic between Norman and Marion in the hotel does feel so much like the dynamic between, in the movie, like the main girl and Russ Tamblyn in Peyton Place. So it's almost like if now somebody went to a movie where you had like Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney, anyone but you type, but then within 40 minutes, one of them murders the other. You're just not prepared because you're like, I know this dynamic. I've seen this. She's going to turn him around. And then not quite how that goes. And, with that.
I mean, I'd watch it.
It would be crazy if we saw anyone but you and Sydney Sweeney killed Glenn Powell. Like, that would kind of rule.
All of the trailers were just the first 40 minutes of the movie.
Especially, though, if we saw it now in the Valentine's Encore, and we had to go, no one mentioned this. No one, I have many people who saw it. Nobody deemed it worthwhile to tell me, she kills him, right?
I mean, it's hard to keep those surprises now. I'm trying to think of a movie that has a crazy surprise like that. My dream has always been to if it's never going to happen, but if I ever directed a movie, to have the trailer come out and it's like George Clooney, Julia Roberts, whatever. They do all the press for the movie. They're the only ones on the poster. You go see the movie, and the first 2 minutes of the movie are just the trailer, and then you realize the real main characters of the movie are just watching a movie trailer, and that's it, and they're not in the rest of the movie. That's always been something I've wanted to do, and I've now that I've said it, I've blown it. But something like that, I can't think of the last time a movie did something crazy.
I will say this: there is a movie this year. I'm not going to spoil it on the podcast, right? I don't know if you've seen it, Patrick. I know Tom and Kyle have.
Madam Web.
There is a prominent movie this year, an Oscar-nominated movie that has been putting 2 actors and an actress on the press circuit a lot, which would make you think that all 3 of them are in the movie a lot instead of one of them being dead 10 minutes in.
I think I probably know who you're talking about. Can you put it in the chat?
I absolutely can.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yes. Yeah. Shocking. Truly shocking. But also not necessarily in a good way. In a way where I'm like, I wish that person was around longer.
Yeah. But it is just like because I saw it early. I'm sure we got the disc before it hit theaters. And so I'm watching it and I know, but then they're doing the press tour to promote it. And I'm just going, you're here a lot.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of the press.
Yeah.
People are going to be confused.
I was a bit like, well, no, I mean, obviously she's not good. I mean, this is just a scare, right? She's gonna
spoilers
the rest of the movie.
Gendered spoilers.
Gendered. Well, he said actresses.
I mean, honestly, this is also going to come out. This is going to come out after our Oscar special, so we will have spoiled the shit out of it by then anyway. But still, nevertheless, that was the last time you mentioned being surprised. It's not the same as a Janet Leigh per se, but it did come to mind in terms of oh yeah, I guess you can just kind of show it was in the marketing a lot.
Yeah, they should do that. I do wish they did that more. I mean, the obvious one that everyone talks about that did the same goddamn thing was Scream, which I mentioned earlier on the podcast. They straight up let's just do the Janet Leigh thing, and
then Billy's last name is Loomis.
Yeah,
Billy's last name is Loomis. Hell, Janet Leigh's daughter stars in a movie with Donald Pleasance playing a character named Samuel Loomis. Yep. Love that.
I will say, though, the one thing I was thinking about Scream, the thing this has over Scream is you hear people talk about Psycho and killing off Janet Leigh.
Yeah.
And you almost forget how long she's in the movie. Right?
It is, yeah.
Because Scream, Drew Barrymore's all over the marketing, right?
Yeah.
But the opening scene, we know nothing about her character, right? She just gets the phone call, and that's effective. But you almost remember Psycho doing the same thing, and you forget how much the first half of this movie is about
it's
her character.
Yeah, it's definitely different, and it does make the whole thing. Honestly, I think they're both equally tragic because what Wes doesn't have in time, he has the brutality of just Jesus Christ, this girl's she just got lynched with her own intestines. This is horrible. But yeah, no, it is shot. Every time I do throw it on, I do always kind of forget exactly how long it is. One, because I think the movie just kind of flies by, so you kind of really just think oh, well, she must have been in the movie for 20 minutes, and all of that,
45 or 50.
Yeah,
it's half the movie, straight up, just half and then a third of the movie is Martin Balsam looking into things, and then. Well, it's like not even a third. It's like a quarter of the movie is him looking for her, and then the final quarter is the sister and the boyfriend looking for her, and you're just like, wow, this is a very weirdly structured movie. It should not work, and yet it does. It's a weird movie like that. But then it does have that ending scene where you just go, oh, Alfred, you were so close. You were so close to the finish line.
Well, the actual ending of I Wouldn't Harm a Fly, that's great. It's the rambling before.
No, that's it. I mean, listen, I love the rambling. It is bad though. It's very dumb, and I kind of love that De Palma straight up just does it in Body Double. No, excuse me, Dress to Kill. Just straight up does it again. Just like, yeah, no, we're just gonna do it again, and just really let you know how stupid all of this is. The only good thing in the Psycho remake, honestly, is that they do that scene again, and it's Robert Forster delivering the dialogue, and you're just like, okay, if you're gonna make me sit through this in a worse version, at least it could be Robert Forster telling me what's going on.
Yeah,
that I could be okay with.
Good look for all the problems with that movie. Great cast.
Great cast.
Everyone. Philip Baker Hall. We got a lot of heavy hitters there.
Oh yeah,
it's good.
Oh yeah.
I think that we're talking about Marion. But, I think Oh, sorry. You're saying.
Well, can I just when you were talking about Peyton Place and the the mother you never see, then it's all just her screaming off screen and everything. That was something I kind of latched onto rewatching it earlier, which is that the Norman's mother stuff is such a cheat. And usually the cheating in the way Hitchcock does would make me not like your movie, because it's all just so like, because there are scenes where it's Norman from Norman's point of view, and we hear the mother, and you can say, okay, well, it's subjective. It's from his POV, so he's hearing his mother. But then you get like the scene when Janet Leigh gets into the room for the first time and hears the mother screaming at him from the hotel, and you hear two very different voices, and you go, she wouldn't hear an old woman's voice. She'd hear Anthony Perkins screaming at himself. That's kind of a cheat, and that you never see her and all of that, and you go, but somehow in this, it works, and I can't really necessarily explain why it works this time.
I think part of the reason it works is, to me anyway, is how smart it is about how it employs Norman, right? Like, I think when you first meet Norman, and obviously the movie is called Psycho, I have to imagine the first time you're seeing it, and this woman shows up and stabs the girl in the shower, right? That maybe your first time viewing it, you're thinking, oh no, his mom is killing this woman. Will he ever find out? And then to have him go, blood, mother, blood, and clean up the body and all of that, right? It's the fact that they make him so subservient, and the fact that they make him an accessory to it all, that I think your brain just kind of, even though you now as a viewer know that's him in the dress, right? You still kind of go, he could never do that, right? Like he's too meek and mild. You kind of buy the idea that he's, an accessory rather than just the killer. It's the reveal of the killer is still so effective, I think.
Yeah, I think I guess that's probably why I think it does work, and it's just so good at laying the breadcrumbs that even though it's like you watch it again, you know what the twists are, but like the first time you see it, you don't really pick up on how clearly it's Norman, but then when you watch it again, it's just like, oh my god, it's right in front of my goddamn face. Yeah. He's such a fucking creep and so weird. And like the one thing that really stuck out to me with that is when Martin Balsam goes to him the first time, and Martin Balsam leaves, and Norman's outside the motel, and he has this look on his face where he smiles, and it's almost like he's proud of himself. But then with the rewatch, you go, oh, he's happy he's getting away with it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, fuck, it's just right there. But it's so not obvious.
It's so funny you said that, Tom. I had a similar reaction to a different moment. Which is one? There is a moment when the Loomis and the sister, whose name escapes me now, get to the hotel. Now he's already dispatched with Martin Balsam and Janet Leigh, right? Mm-hmm. And he sends them down to their hotel room, right? He's like, do you want me to walk you down? Oh, no, we can get there ourselves, right? And he looks at them, he watches them walk away so clinically, right? Like when he's with Balsam and when he's with Janet Leigh, he's twitchy, right? He's nervous, he's got no emotion because you can see on his face when he's looking at the two of them this vibe of, I've already killed two people. Like, I just got to worry about the logistics here. I can do this. I know I could do this. Now it's just a matter of figuring out the logistics. So it's funny you say that at the bottom because I had that with a completely different scene, but it's the same thing of like you can just tell in his face, you know?
Yeah, and it's just it gets back to that Perkins thing. He's so good. Like it just makes you it I don't know. We won't harp too much on Perkins anymore, but
no, it makes you sad.
Yeah,
it does.
But again, I'll say it. His SNL's good, and people should seek it out because he's funny in it. It's a bummer watching stuff like that though, because you're like, oh, he has this range where he could do Company, he could do SNL, he could do Psycho, he could do Psycho 4, you know, and like all of them work for him, and it's just a shame that you both lost him so young, and that you lost so much time when you did have him, you know.
I think one other thing we should talk about outside of the film itself is the marketing, because that is the thing you hear about a lot. And
the one poster that has escaped my grasp so far that I desperately want.
Oh, is that the him saying "Don't come in"? I have the quote written down somewhere.
Yeah.
I thought I had the quote written down somewhere. I do not. I thought I took a note of it. But it's basically a whole long spiel that he has of like, we will not allow anyone in, not even the Queen of England, God rest her, or God bless her, or whatever. I have here a lobby card reproduction that does, it's just Janet Leigh, but it does show on it for anybody who can, who is watching this. No one will be admitted except at the very beginning of the picture. They made a huge deal out of, because he didn't want it getting spoiled, nobody could enter after the movie started, which you hear about all the time. I really didn't appreciate how much that wasn't common until then, until I watched the DVD I have from the Hitchcock Masterwork set has a bonus feature that's just newsreel footage of when Psycho opened, and it now feels insane to hear people going, Mr. Hitchcock wants people to arrive on time for the movie. He set up armed guards outside the theater. But don't worry, folks. He recorded himself on speaker apologizing to you for having to wait in line. Will this catch on? Who can say? And it's like, it is genuinely baffling to me.
Yeah.
That like when we hear about movies and people talk about like, movies, people used to get dressed up to go to the movies, right? People used to treat it as like as big as going to the theater. Okay, but also apparently until 1960, people also were like, I can show up anytime, right?
Yeah.
I can just
it would run all day, so they'd show up 30 minutes late and then stay through the end and watch the first 30 minutes, which is insane.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
There's so many stories like that where you're like, oh, people were just dumber back then.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with they saw a train coming towards the screen and they all screamed and ran away, or like they were laughing so hard they were rolling in the aisles. You're like, you guys are just dumb. Like, how did this happen? How did you get to the point where like Daffy Duck wearing a dress like made you laugh so hard you fell out of your chair? You know?
Is the other thing I will say though with the marketing, there's a trailer that I think of all the time because the trailers wouldn't show footage of the movie. Right?
Yeah.
Except the weird thing is, in this one of these special features I was watching, they went, the trailers didn't show any footage of the movie, and then they proceed to cut to a trailer showing footage of the movie. But whatever. We're just going to, the legend has become fact. We're going to print the legend. The trailers, there's one trailer that is just Alfred Hitchcock himself walking you through the sets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he's walking through like the office with all the taxidermied birds, and he at one point points to an owl and just goes, pay very close attention to this bird. That's going to be very important. And I fucking love it. I absolutely love it because on the one hand, he's trying to be like, oh, I'm going to throw him off the scent. But also, that dude loved pranks.
Yeah.
So he definitely did that, just being like, I'm going to fuck with people. I want some guy to walk out of that movie going, they never did anything with a bird.
See, we need the next Jordan Peele movie to have a trailer with just Jordan Peele.
Just walking you
just throwing you off the scent of just like, look at this bird.
I mean,
just straight up do the bird thing.
there's not enough trailers now where it's people just like talking about their movie. That's not like, hey, I'm John Krasinski, come see my new movie. You know, like that kind of thing is, they still do that a little bit, but more of just like, here's what this movie's about. I'm not going to show you it. I'll give you 4 sentences. Here I am. I'm Albert Brooks telling you about real life while I sit at a desk and wear 3D glasses. You know, like that's it. That doesn't happen anymore.
They do it now. They do it now before movies a lot. Like, you go to the movies now, and there's like I went to see. You talk about the train coming into the station. I almost had that because we went to see Perfect Days, the new Wim Wenders movie, right? And it cuts to Wim Wenders and the star of the film on screen. So I'm ready for him to do that. Hello, thank you for coming to our movie. And for some reason, he just goes, "Hello, AMC Lincoln Square," and the whole crowd was like, "Whoa, hang on."
Are we zooming right now? What's going on?
It was a real like you felt it in the room. It was like, wait, shit. He just said,
"Can he see us?" Yeah.
It was so specific. It was unsettling.
So hello, Theater 12 at the AMC Lincoln Square. I think you are called the Egyptian, maybe? He like gets very hyper-specific.
Hello, Michael Natale with his big bowl of popcorn. What is this? What is this German doing?
So anyway, I'm sorry to take us off track there, but I just thought the market, like, obviously there's so much to talk about with Psycho. Psycho has been, talked to death. It is one of the most talked about movies, from everybody. I remember watching the Slavoj Žižek, the philosopher, did this, what is it called? The Pervert's Guide to Cinema. And if it's this whole thing about like psychosexual stuff in film and like his 2 beats he kept hitting, or 3 beats he kept hitting were Psycho, The Birds, and then David Lynch's Wild at Heart.
Hell yeah.
And that's extra jarring because, and I don't mean to mind, Zizek has a very specific way of speaking. If you've heard him, this is how he talks. He has a very specific way of speaking. So he'll just talk about it and keep going. So when you watch Psycho, much like the previous Vertigo, Psycho.
Yeah, I don't think I could listen to that much longer. Delivery. Stop doing it.
Bobby Peru. Anyway.
Stop. Enough. Basta. Enough.
But I wanted to see, because we have more to talk about, but we have a little more to talk about. Patrick, we're no. We know that you know that we're talking about an Ewok film. We also know that you don't know what Ewok film we're talking about.
Well, all right, here's the problem. First of all, I have to sit down because my computer's dying. So I need to plug that in. Here's what happened. I knew we were talking about an Ewok movie. I assumed it was Caravan of Courage because that feels like the reasonable first one to talk about. But I did not remember that I actually said Battle for Endor. So today... Well, here's the crazy thing. My bit going into today was going to be whenever you guys talked about Psycho, I was going to say that I watched the 1998 one. That was going to be my bit. And then I actually watched the wrong movie. So, I mean, look, I've seen this movie. I remember it, but
we're not there yet. We're not at the Ewoks yet. We have one last thing to do.
Okay.
Well, first off, did anybody else have any more Psycho observations they wanted to make before we moved forth?
Good movie.
I mean, it's just great that the money gets buried with the car. That's just such a great bit. Love it.
I'm so glad.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's when Marion is driving and she's thinking about what everyone's saying back home, and she's got this look on her face of terror and she's getting nervous. But then when she starts thinking about the rich guy getting pissed off, she starts smiling. I'm just like, oh, that's so fucking funny. Well, that's such a good bit.
And speaking of that moment, what I do love is before they do anything else, before she gets to the hotel, they bring the theme back for when she's driving in the car. The first time you hear it is she gets scared when she sees her boss. And she's driving. Because they give you that score at the beginning, right? So you hear that score and you're like, oh, some spooky shit's going on. And by introducing it in Marion's scene in the car, you're able to go, oh, this score is actually just about her anxiety, right? It's not like they wait until Norman shows up, right? So now when you hear that score, you're trained to think of it as, oh, well, this is her interior monologue or whatever. So smart. Also love that her driving the car and the boss in front of it just feels like when they run into Marcellus in Pulp Fiction, right? Right?
Yes.
Is it Marcellus? Right. Yeah. Anyway, with that in mind, Tom, how do you think Psycho did at the Academy Awards?
Oh, God. I don't know. Probably, I don't know. Best Director and Best Cinematography nominations, didn't win anything.
I love how you always sound unprepared for this, as though this is not a thing we always do.
Well, I'm not thinking about it until we do it. Well, no, it's not that I'm caught off guard. It's that I'm not thinking about it until I sit down to do it. I'm trying not to cheat. I could cheat. I could have Googled this fucker the whole time, knowing this was coming.
It was not nominated for Best Picture. The nominees that year were The Alamo, Elmer Gantry, Sons and Lovers, The Sundowners, and the winner, The Apartment. It was nominated for Best Director, which it lost to The Apartment. Was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Janet Leigh, who lost to Shirley Jones for Elmer Gantry. Was nominated for Best Art Direction, Black and White, lost to The Apartment. Best Cinematography, Black and White, which it lost to Sons and Lovers. However, the one that's
the title for Psycho.
The one that's more glaring to me, it was not nominated for Best Editing. The nominees were The Apartment, The Alamo, Inherit the Wind, Pepe, and Spartacus. So
I'm glad Spartacus is in there. That's nice, but what are you guys doing?
You're not a fan of Pepe, Tom?
I like Pepe
He's
Sylvia.
a skunk. He floats when he smells things, Tom. He gets horny and he floats.
Hey, listen, I've been there.
It's actually Cantinflas. When Cantinflas, who was the supporting actor in Around the World in 80 Days, he was a huge, I believe, Mexican comedy star, Spanish comedy star, a huge star in his home country. They put him in Around the World in 80 Days. Everybody went, this guy has star power. Let's do a second movie with him. Now he'll be the lead. It was called Pepe, and then they all promptly went, no more of this. We don't need to do this again. It was the Roberto Benigni thing. It was Life is Beautiful. Everybody went, more of this guy. And then Pinocchio, and everyone went, that's enough.
Burn him at the stake.
It's crazy that he has not had a comeback.
Benigni? He worked.
I assume he's doing stuff in Italy or whatever.
So Benigni is weird. The most recent American film I think he did was Woody Allen's To Rome with Love. So,
of course,
quite a resume there. He was in the Matteo Garrone Pinocchio a couple of years ago. Do you remember the Pinocchio that was up for 2 Oscars that only I saw? He plays Geppetto in that. Yeah. So, he still works. Sure. He tours the country doing a reading of Dante. That's his big thing.
Sure.
He's memorized the Divine Comedy and just recites it to people. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, course, why wouldn't he have done that?
Psycho. Typically, this is where we would say fare thee well, and we'd let Patrick do his plugs. But as we mentioned, we have another thing to talk about. So we will take a little break, and we will be right back in the second part of our podcast, where Tom goes from really liking Patrick to hating him. We'll be back in a little bit talking about Ewoks Battle for Endor. This is the second half of our episode. This is the obligatory second half that comes with any time Patrick's on. So you know what? I've given up. Patrick, I'm handing the show over to you. What are we doing now?
We are talking about Ewoks, The Battle for Endor, which was released in 1985. It was directed by Jim and Ken Wheat from a story by George Lucas. It's a sequel to Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure. It was released on TV in America on ABC on November 24th, 1985, and it was released theatrically in Europe. Isn't that cool? Aren't we excited to talk about this?
That seems like a punishment to the Europeans.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I like these movies. I know they're not great, but I like them because they have all the Phil Tippett stop motion, the Joe Johnston iconography. It's very much of its time, and it feels like a movie that I would have watched on TV when I was sick from school. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So much so that Mike, I assume you know about this, but this brown tube up here, during COVID, I bought Italian poster for the first Ewok movie, right? Tom, I assume this is news to you.
This is news to me.
I did not look at the size because I said, oh, it's a one sheet. You know? It's a regular old one sheet. No, wrong. It's an Italian quattro, which means it is, I believe, 39 inches by 55 inches, I want to say. Maybe a little bit bigger than that. I did just get it linen backed because I said that's the only way I will ever hang it up. And when I moved into this apartment, I've been saving a space on my wall for the day when it gets framed, which is going to cost me 2 months rent, 1 month, 1.5 months rent.
Oh,
I'm in the process of framing it, is what I'm trying to say.
It doesn't surprise me that the Italians have a big poster of tiny, furry little men.
No. But here's the thing. It's a Drew Struzan. It's beautiful.
That's too much for this movie. That's too much.
Gorgeous. Well, it's not for this one. That's the thing. It's for the one that I watched, which is
for the one. Yes, for either of these movies, that's too much. That's just too much.
We should note this is a really interesting thing because I decided I'm going to rewatch both. Right? Because obviously Caravan of Courage came first. I think it was just called an Ewok Adventure. And I was like, I haven't seen either of these since I was a very little kid. So let me watch Caravan of Courage and then watch Battle for Endor. So I have recently watched both. Patrick, you mistakenly have recently only watched Caravan of Courage.
Yes.
Tom has watched Battle for Endor, has never seen Caravan of Courage. So he has only watched the sequel, does not know what happened in the first one.
Nope.
Okay.
So, good argument that I don't know what happened in the second one either.
Now, Tom, what do you think happened in the first one?
This little girl that looks like a cartoon character come to life is just, I don't know, looking for the cop from Die Hard.
Which, I should say, not the same actor from the first movie.
No.
Oh, why would it be?
Yeah. Now, Mike, what is your ranking of these two movies and Return of the Jedi? And Rise of Skywalker, because Wicket's in that one, too.
Okay, so then...
Wait, Wicket's in that one?
Wicket's in Rise of Skywalker, yeah.
That's the Ewok that's in Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah.
What?
It's Wicket and his son.
But wait, how did Wicket and his son get... They're not on Endor in the Rise of Skywalker.
They see the Star Destroyers blowing up, and they go to a shot of Endor, and you see Wicket standing there with his little spear, and his son looking up at the thing blowing up.
Because do you remember for like a year straight after that movie came out, they kept saying, "Oh, well, this thing happened in the. Did you know that blah 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 happened in the Rise of Skywalker?"
It's in the movie.
No,
it's in the movie.
No. But they go, "Did you know that that's not Endor? That's one of another moon." And so why is he not on Endor?
No, Wicket is on Endor. When they are on the Death Star, when they see the Death Star in the water, that is not Endor. But also, here's the confusing thing about Endor. They always say they're on the forest moon of Endor. Does that mean they are on the planet? Is Endor the name of the moon, or is Endor the name of the planet that the moon is going around? Because I believe canonically they are both Endor.
Of course, George. Of course.
No, it's
Patrick. Oh my god.
So you're asking me. Ranking. I do think Return of the Jedi comes first.
Okay, hot take.
Controversial.
Then I'm gonna go ahead and put Battle for Endor, and then Caravan of Courage, and then The Rise of Skywalker. I think Battle for Endor is the better of the two.
I agree with that.
Okay,
I agree with that.
Do you agree with the ranking? That's the question. What's your ranking now?
I think that's probably the same.
I think it's probably the same for me too, and I haven't seen one of those movies.
I think it's probably the same.
I think now would be a good time, if you will, to read Patrick, if you can recall it, to read Patrick your Letterboxd review for Battle for Endor.
I'll bring it up just so I don't butcher my own
your own prose
review.
Yeah.
Yes. Simply, it is just maybe it's time to quit my podcast.
So that's. So that is
I mean, that's been the long game for me.
Listen, you're getting close to succeeding. But I also just want to put it into context of my schizophrenic movie watching habits. This is sandwiched in between Millennium Mambo and Freeway with Reese Witherspoon and Kiefer Sutherland. And so just right in the middle there is Battle for Endor. 1 star. Joe Bob says, check it out.
So, yeah. So you'd never seen this before, Tom?
No, but it's one of those things I've heard, I've heard the rumors of around campfires my whole life. And even when it was added to Disney Plus, like, oh my God, they added the weird shit they did in the 80s on Disney Plus. I'm just like, great. I'm never going to watch that. Lo and behold.
Joke's on you.
I said that while holding a monkey's paw. Because Patrick Cotnoir came into my life and said, I'm going to destroy this man's sanity. Wow, this movie was... this is not my podcast. Patrick, lead us on the journey.
You're right. This is my podcast. You're right. I mean, what do you want to talk about? I think there's so many things to talk about in this movie. We could talk about Teak, our little friend Teak.
Yeah.
We could talk about... Teak is the little fast one.
Oh, what the fuck was that guy? Oh, he was a nightmare. What was that design?
He's so fast.
He's so fast, but he looks like a demon. He looks like my sleep paralysis demon.
Tom, if you had gone to MGM in the 90s like we were talking about, you could see little Teak riding on Star Tours.
I would have fought him. And I would have been banned for life for what I did to that little fuck.
Okay. All right. What do we... Tom, what's your opinion on just all of the real-life Earth animals in this movie? There's just horses, confusing. And there's chickens, and there's, all that.
Very confusing.
Is there a rabbit in this one or Caravan of Courage? I don't remember.
I don't remember. I think it's probably this one. Tom, here's another thing that might make you mad. What if I told you that this movie took place before Return of the Jedi?
No.
And all the Ewoks speak English in this one, but they don't speak English in Return of the Jedi.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I mean, of course it's a fucking prequel. Why wouldn't it be? Fuck. Oh my god. Also, Battle for Endor. No, it's not.
Okay. I think that's it.
It's not a Battle for Endor. It's just it's a fight that happens on Endor.
Yeah. With Sharal.
Yeah, it's not a battle for the dominance of Endor. It's just a battle on one of the Endors.
Yeah. I believe, and Mike, I think they have made Sharal a Night Sister. Did you know that?
Oh, really?
I believe they have retroactively made Sharal a Night Sister.
Okay, why? When?
I don't know.
Was this like a comic book?
No, let me look. Hang on.
Fire up that Wikipedia.
I will.
I need to remember. I have actual tears in my eyes from I would have fought him.
Okay, well now here's the thing. On her Wikipedia, she is called a Night Sister.
Okay.
But it's only on Legends, I think, so I don't know if this is actually...
Well, that doesn't count.
I know it doesn't, but it's
fun. Season 2 of Ahsoka.
Yeah, these movies aren't canon anymore, right? They're Legends.
These movies are Legends, yeah.
Yeah, they're Legends. They don't...
Yeah, because they're in the very bottom category in the Star Wars section of Disney Plus. Wouldn't even come up when I searched them.
Yeah, that is...
I had to manually go into the Star Wars section and find them, which was fun.
She is in the video game Star Wars Galaxies, which was what is it? MMORPG.
Oh, MMORPG.
Yeah. She's in that, where I believe she is called a Night Sister.
Okay.
Sure.
I kind of thought Tom might have enjoyed this, if just because I was expecting the Wilfred Brimley of it all would have won him over.
Well, listen.
Similar vibes.
Yes, very similar vibes. That is my future, to be clear.
Yeah.
I won't have that little fuck with me. Teak will not be with me. that bastard man will not be with me.
Uh-huh.
But I will be living alone with an animal in the woods. That man is a professional. I gotta say, he is not playing this down. He is giving it his all. He is talking to those puppets like they are real fucking things.
Yeah.
He's talking to Wicket like he's one of his supporting characters, supporting actors in The Thing. Just like, hey, how you doing, buddy? Yeah, we're gonna go. We're gonna climb up this wall, and everything's gonna be great. Just like, does he know that's not a real man?
I think he does. I think he's a good actor, Tom.
He's a very good actor because he's really trying in a movie where no one else is.
Well, and it's such a contrast to Caravan of Courage, because Caravan of Courage is narrated by Burl Ives, who folks probably know from like the Rudolph movies. But in this, like, you do just kind of hear the uncertainty. Where like when Rudolph, he's doing that, it's like Rudolph and the elf went off and met, that kind of thing. Whereas in this, it's Burl Ives going, and so Wicket and the Ewoks got aboard their spaceship to fight Gargax. There's just a little uncertainty on every line, and it's kind of incredible. Tom, believe it or not, Caravan of Courage is worse. Caravan of Courage is...
It's so hard to believe, but we did just rank The Rise of Skywalker below both of them, so there is worse Star Wars than this.
How do you feel about... I mean, look, it's a ballsy move. I think we can be real about this, about the entire family being killed off so quickly.
Yeah, yep.
It's a ballsy move.
Yes.
Because the whole first film is about the girl and her brother trying to find their parents. The entire first film is the Ewoks help her reunite with her family.
I mean, it's very much a Newt situation from Aliens to Alien 3, where you're like, we got to get this girl to safety, we got to reconnect with her, we got to... Oh, no, she died.
Sorry, Patrick, you know what I'm going to say?
What?
It's a little bit of a Janet Leigh and Psycho, right? You don't expect it. Some death right up top, right? Yeah, see? We're tying it together. We're getting some continuity here,
Now, this movie happened, obviously, post Return of the Jedi, and George wrote the story for this. George was in a very weird headspace family-wise, where he was very much in love with his kid. He had his kids around, like very happy that they were around. But the family aspect, he did want to get rid of the mother pretty quickly.
Why, Patrick? Did something in George's life? Did something happen? I don't know if you've ever discussed it.
Yeah, George did get divorced. People can look this up. I'm not going into it again. But George was not psyched with the concept of family in the mid-'80s, I think. And I feel that coming through this movie in so many different ways. So many different ways.
So you're saying this is his The Brood?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. So
I mean, isn't Sindel kind of wearing a little snowsuit?
She does look like the little blonde girl in The Brood, yeah.
See?
Yeah, no, it's fitting.
But we like
this. This would
ahead.
be George's The Brood. This would be how he deals with his divorce. Just this absolute nonsense.
Yeah, he shoots it in his backyard, and it's absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
This is also, Tom, I don't know if you know this, primarily shot on Skywalker Ranch. Both of these movies.
I mean, I didn't know that, but somehow I'm not surprised based on the production values.
Yeah. I do think, I mean, it's beautiful. When you see the vistas of Northern California, you're like, this looks very nice. I wish it was shot like a movie instead of like a TV show. And it's kind of wild that they couldn't get some more money to actually film it a little bit nicer. But
you know what it reminds me of? Honestly?
I texted it to Mike that it's shocking that George would allow anything this cheap and chintzy looking to be released, even in that weird fallow period between Return of the Jedi and the prequels. It's so weird that it's just like, this is up to our level of quality, and you just George. No.
It is fascinating that he does not have. And look, I'm going to say it again. I enjoy these movies for what they are, but it is fascinating that he does not have the same feeling about these that he does as the holiday special, where he's like, burn all the copies, you can never see them. Like, these were out on VHS, they came out on DVD, they're on Disney Plus right now. Like, they're not being hidden,
Yeah.
they're actively like out there in the world, and it's interesting that that's the case and that they're not pushed to the side.
What struck me though watching it is that weirdly, despite the fact that it features Ewoks and is called Star Wars, it reminded me less of anything Star Wars and more of a different George Lucas project. I kept getting Captain EO vibes from this.
Oh, interesting. Or even Willow, a little bit of Willow too.
A little bit of Willow. I just kept thinking, especially when now I'm forgetting the woman's name, the villain woman, right?
Charal.
When she shows up, I just thought of Angelica Houston and Captain EO.
Sure. Yeah,
and the again, they don't look alike, but Teak, I kept thinking of Hooter, right?
Sure.
Tom, I could just be saying words right now. You would not know. You don't know who Hooter is, do you?
No.
We could make.
You said Teak, and my spine curled.
Hooter is a little blue elephant man who has a flute for a nose in Captain EO.
Oh, okay.
You know Captain EO?
Now, I just put a secret to Mike in the chat, and this is something
I
can't say out loud, but this is a little surprise for later.
Well, can I tell you, this is very George Lucas talk show of you, Patrick. There's something in the private chat that people can't say.
Yeah, I'm giving you a little secret.
First time
this will be fun to revisit next year.
Yeah.
All right. You know what this actually felt like watching when I watched it? It felt like all those like cheap. Well, I wish. Well, it made me wish I was in Faces of Death. It felt like all those Conan the Barbarian knockoffs that came out in the 80s, but they were like really cheap, and they were just like, yeah, people see it, it's Conan, and it was clearly filmed for like $10,000 in a Mediterranean island.
I mean, this is also, it's very much something that you're sick from school in 1998 and it's playing on the Disney Channel, or 1996 and it's playing on the Disney Channel over and over again. Like, I don't remember watching it as a kid, but I'm sure I saw it 15 times, at my grandma's or whatever.
This feels like the perfect kind of movie that people say, oh, well, it's better when you watch it on VHS, because this does not benefit from being in 4K and really getting to see how poorly made it was. This is very much pan and scan this bitch, and kind of just fade out with some like old pizza and some warm soda.
But now I'll say this: I was watching, obviously not the correct movie today, so I can't speak necessarily on the quality of this one. But I was watching the first one, being like, man, I love how real it is. I love how it's stop motion. I love how you can like see that that's a puppet. I like that about it, So even in 4K, I'm like, I like that I know that that's a puppet.
I will say Teak running fast by just being sped up footage is not aided by 4K. I will cop to that.
And also,
is it better than Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan running fast?
Well,
because that happens.
I mean, listen, I can't answer that, Patrick, because I'm waiting until I get to watch the theatrical re-release this year.
Sure, May 3rd.
Yeah, hell yeah.
May the third be with you. I don't know.
Tom, would you be psyched if when Phantom Menace gets re-released again, they've added like 6 new scenes?
I mean, that would actually make me curious.
It would be great. I would love it so much. They're like, we added new CGI, new scenes in here. It would be so
many dewbacks passing by now. In every scene. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan getting gassed by the Trade Federation. Dewback.
Yeah, there's a dewback. There's a dewback Senate pod.
But they're very polite. It's just 2 very serious dewbacks.
Yes.
See, you're joking, but I would watch that. That would get me to the theaters for that. No, it's like the Ewoks, they still look good, but like the Teak puppet is so poorly made. And like the stop motion of when they attack the family and you have that stop motion clearly superimposed over footage, and it's just so like it's clearly the same like 5 seconds every time they cut back to it.
I think maybe we just like different stuff.
I think we do. I mean, that's fair.
I did reach into the bucket next to me because I thought I could pull out my dewback action figure and I couldn't get to it easily enough, but I did reach in and he was the first thing I grabbed.
Hey!
So,
I did see you reach into fish around in a bucket and then close it, seemingly empty-handed, and I was very confused.
No.
What was going on?
You know what I can reach in and grab? I mean, this is very quick. We got a do-back leg.
Okay. Why just the leg? How do you have this stored?
They popped out. They're just in a tub. They're just in a tub.
You disassemble them before the storage?
No, the leg just pops out on the action figure. I think when it was in the box, they couldn't fit all the legs on the do-back itself, so they had one that came off, and that was that one.
That's that Hasbro magic, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Hasbro, right? Because Hasbro had the license by that point, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm just making sure. I have fond memories of Midnight Madness, so.
Of course. We miss it.
When I worked at Toys R Us when Force Awakens came out, I took the day off just to go do Midnight Madness. My manager was confused. He's like, "Why do you want to be back here on your day off?" I got it, man.
Now there are some things. There are some things I like in the credits for this that I want to point out.
Please
First of all, I think this is the one that Fincher worked on, right?
I didn't know that, but
I believe Fincher is like a matte photography guy on this one. It's one of his first jobs.
Not surprising. Okay.
But in the credits, and I don't remember who these people are. Well, first of all, Matthew Roloff as Ewok with crutches, which I like. I think that's fun. But then,
can I say I would have been on board if the Ewok with crutches it had been a full double indemnity situation.
Sure,
that should have been the movie.
Sure, yeah.
One Ewok pretending to be the dead husband of another to get insurance money.
They should make more of these movies. That's my other take: is that Disney Plus should just make Ewok stuff. It's easy. But then there's people credited as Card Player 1 and Card Player 2. Do you guys know what these...
I did fucking... I don't remember one of them, but the other is Johnny Weissmuller Jr., right?
Yes.
It's the son of Tarzan.
Yes.
He's a card player in this.
Who are Card Player 1 and Card Player 2?
I don't know. I just remember seeing it on the Wikipedia that Johnny Weissmuller's son is in Ewok Battle for Endor.
I'm trying to look to see who they are. I mean, there's nothing. It just says Card Player 1.
There's not a robust Tumblr following for Johnny Weissmuller Jr. for you.
I mean, Card Player 2 should have a Wikipedia page.
Patrick, no one's stopping you. Just want to be clear.
I guess that's true.
This is not live, so you can't. Throw it to the... I tell you what, if people are watching this on YouTube, right? If you're watching this on YouTube, Patrick, please, you've got a fan following.
Yeah.
Command them to do this. If it's not
Do it. Now's the time.
Card Player 2 Wikipedia page.
Now, Tom, here's my question. All right. Lucasfilm comes to you. It's 1985 or whatever. And they say, you're going to make an Ewok movie for us. You're going to. Okay? You don't have a choice. You have to do it. What do you do?
What do I do?
What do you do? What is your Ewok movie? And also, they want it to lead into an animated series. That's the other thing.
Well, like all of the trends of the 80s, my movie would be much more adult, and then the cartoon would be nothing like the movie. So my movie would just be the Battle for Algiers, but with Ewoks.
Great.
I mean, just...
Do they speak? Do they?
No,
how are you?
No.
Okay. Well, you've got 2 hours to kill. Are there humans there?
Well, yeah. They're. I'm probably gonna say, I come in after this original pitch and they pre-production, but it fell apart. Tom, we need you to save this movie. I'm keeping Brimley.
Okay. You're keeping Aubrey Miller? Are you keeping Aubrey Miller?
Who is Aubrey Miller?
She's Sindel Tawani.
The little
is
girl.
That the child?
The little girl.
The little girl. No.
Are you keeping Eric Walker, Mace Tawani? I also want to be clear, I'm not looking at another tab right now.
God damn. That is the thing that threw me, though, is remembering that there is a different character named Mace in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Before Mace Windu, they were like, nah, this is the guy who's getting that name.
I think there's a Mace in one of the early drafts of the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was just a name that was like kicking around in his head for a long time.
Yeah, that's he had a lot of stuff that he was just like holding on to for the right time. Yeah. I gotta respect George for that.
Do you keep the giant from Twin Peaks?
Yeah.
Of course.
I'm not even.
Yeah.
Come on. What are we doing here?
Okay, great.
Yeah, obviously.
Mike, do you have any pitches? Do you have any?
I'm fine with what we got. I enjoyed that movie. I don't like Caravan of Courage, but I like Battle for Endor.
Look, I think you get a lot of cool Tippett creature monster things in this. Look, in Caravan of Courage, Gorax is pretty cool.
I mean, I like the bad guy look. My thing is, I'm not the only one that says this, I do kind of miss when the creatives gave a little less of a shit about Star Wars, right? Like I I'm not full holiday special pilled, but I am like, yeah, let the hyperspace hoopla happen. Like let Pee Wee Herman voice a tiny droid that flies a ship. Like I'm okay with that. These movies are inherently silly from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And when people were criticizing like the new films and like, oh, Yoda says page turners they are not. What are we doing here? I'm like, in the first film, you have that bit with Han being like, we're fine. How are you?
Yeah,
like, you have that whole shtick. There's always shtick in these movies. And I think like people take them so seriously now. Let's get silly. I mean, truth be told, like I have certain new Star Wars stuff that I'm a little indifferent on. Tom and I are both maybe in the camp of everybody needs to shut up about Andor a bit. I think of like, guys, I get it. I fully, yes, I understand. You read Karl Marx. That's wonderful. There are other Star Wars shows.
Yeah. But also not every Star Wars show should be Andor.
No.
The whole thing with Star Wars is like a lot of it's dumb. You know?
Yeah. My favorite Star Wars piece of media I've seen recently is the Young Jedi Adventures.
Yeah, it's great. It's fun.
The Blue Bear guy. I like him.
It's fun.
It's fun. It's good. You know?
I mean, I love the Filoni stuff, and I don't know. The thing with that stuff that always makes me laugh is everyone's like, "Oh, I wish Disney didn't have it. We need more George kind of stuff and make it weird again." And I go, "I don't know, guys. Filoni was handpicked by George, and Filoni does some weird shit."
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I just sent Mike another secret in the private chat.
That's holy cow! Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, none of these are like these are all just like controversial opinions that Patrick has.
Yeah.
We're just reacting to that. They're shocking.
Yeah. It's
these
mostly
would get you
like Nikki Haley support. That's mostly what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for that message tomorrow. Maybe we can just cut that out. So I would say, unless you have any more, Patrick, I have one last thing I want to note on this.
Yeah.
Which I have here. Just like we wrap up a normal episode, we're talking about a movie, Tom.
Yeah.
And so since we're talking about a movie, Tom, how do you think Ewoks Battle for Endor did at the 38th Primetime Emmy Awards?
And I'll throw on Academy Awards, too.
Oh, well, with the Academy Awards, then, that'll change my tally from 0 to 0.
Tom, I am sorry to tell you, you're wrong.
At
the Primetime Emmy Awards, Ewoks: The Battle for Endor and the CBS documentary Dinosaur were both jury-awarded Emmys for Outstanding Special Visual Effects. The film also received 2 nominations, one for Outstanding Children's Program, where, for the record, it was nominated alongside the Disney Sunday movie The Girl Who Spelled Freedom, the 116th edition of the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, Punky Brewster, and the winner, Wonderworks' Anne of Green Gables. It was also nominated for Outstanding Sound Mixing for a Miniseries or Special, where it was nominated alongside Mussolini, The Untold Story, Death of a Salesman, and the winner, An Early Frost, which was the first drama film to deal with the topic of AIDS. So...
That's also pretty early for that.
Yeah. But I was just struck by the fact that it's like, in one category, it's nominated alongside Anne of Green Gables and Punky Brewster. It's also nominated alongside Mussolini, Death of a Salesman, and an AIDS drama.
I wish the movie was called Mussolini, Death of a Salesman.
I could see the parallels to that play. That would be interesting.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us, taking up so much time. I would ask you if you have anything to plug, but I think there is unfortunately one other thing that we do have to do.
Yeah.
we're going to do like we did last season. So you're going to tell us what movie you're picking.
Yeah.
We are going to beep it out for the audience.
Okay, great.
We
and
are
this is this is 1993?
I think so. Yes. The 93 year. We are going to include what it is that you're making us.
Yeah.
Star Wars thing you're making us participate in some capacity. People will know that, but they will not know what.
I mean, there's only one choice.
Is there?
Oh God.
It's.
Yeah, he's right.
He's right. He has to be right.
He is right. He's right.
There's no other choice.
There isn't. Honestly, there isn't.
And obviously that pairs well with Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure.
Because much like that movie where...
He's gonna quit! He's gonna quit! Okay, well, so folks, you won't know what movie Patrick will be back for, but you do know we will be discussing Caravan of Courage, a film that Patrick and I have both already watched this year.
We got a year. We got another year.
And Tom has not seen and knows only that we both think it's worse than Battle for Endor. What I truly can't wait for, too, is that neither of you is going to remember that we picked this next year.
No,
I guarantee
I'm not.
neither of you is going to remember.
And the problem, Tom's not even going to remember what happened in this movie, so he's going to have to rewatch Battle for Endor, too.
Is he? This one comes after.
Yeah, it's just as a reminder for what's coming up.
No. Oh, I'm
it's the full saga. You got to watch the full saga.
I got to watch the full saga.
And then you have to play the Lego Skywalker Saga game that came out like 2 years ago because the Tawani family is in the Endor level in a photo in one of the houses.
Hey. Video game? No. You save that for season 6, Patrick. We're not doing it all. You got to save that up, all right? Patrick, what do you want to plug away? Tell folks where they can find you, what you're up to.
When does this come out?
March, late March, probably. I mean,
if we haven't missed March 23rd or 24th yet, the George Lucas Talk Show is coming to Seattle and Portland. We're also doing a screening of the I'm George Lucas, Connor Ratliff story, which is a documentary about Connor Ratliff and George Lucas Talk Show. That'll be at the Make Believe Fest in Seattle that just got announced today, so you can timestamp when we recorded this. We'll also, I assume this will be announced at that point, so I'm just going to say it. April 13th, we're doing a show at Littlefield in Brooklyn. And I believe April 16th, we're doing a screening of the documentary at Nighthawk in Brooklyn. There's going to be more stuff coming up. George Lucas Talk Show, follow that on the socials. Follow me on the socials. I don't really care about Twitter anymore, but it's at Patrick Cotnoir. Instagram, it's at Cotnoir. Also, if you're in Los Angeles, come see AskCat at UCB. It's a weekly improv show with a lot of famous, funny people. I don't know. That's it, right?
I assume so.
Those are the big ones. That's the big ones. I got other stuff, but those are the important things.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next season. I look forward to seeing you again next season. Not sure how Tom's feeling now. But
as usual, I half look forward to it.
But Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. But everybody else, stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members like Martin Scorsese, Alfred Woodard, and Leonard Maltin, and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and us, who can submit their nominations for the registry in a form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of each episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration on behalf of You're Missing Out. Here are today's picks.
All right, so I guess this is kind of a wild card, but in my mind, not really, but talking to Mike, it might be. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to just launch right into it. I mentioned it in the episode because I find it so funny how shamelessly this movie rips off Psycho's theme and opening credits. I'm picking Reanimator. This wasn't a wild card. Interesting. I'm picking Reanimator because, one, I just think it's an amazing movie, one of the best horror movies of the 80s. It's just fantastic all around, and also just so almost very like William Castle-esque, the way Psycho is Hitchcock going into a William Castle world. It's very William Castle-esque to just straight up, without even like vanilla icing, doing the oh no, it's different, do. No, it's just straight up the Psycho score. It's amazing. It's really fucking great. And also, I just want Reanimator in the film registry. I think horror needs to be represented. And 80s is, probably the best decade for horror. There could be arguments for the 70s. Maybe the last decade we've been living through. I don't know. We can have that discussion another time. But either way, Reanimator is on the top of the list of the 80s for me. Top tier of the list, I should say. And I think it needs to be in. And there's a connection to Psycho there. So, I'm picking Reanimator. There you go. Mike, let's hear it.
Well, I'm in a bit of a bind. I was like, there are two obvious registry picks for Psycho. I will have both on hand, and whichever one Tom picks, I'll do the other. And then Tom picked something else entirely. So the way this is going to work is I got a little quarter right here, and we're just going to let fate decide what the pick is. All right.
Nice catch, dumbass.
It's spinning, and we got tails. All right, congratulations. 1996's Scream, which is my submission to the National Film Registry. We talked about it on the episode. Scream, heavily indebted to Psycho. Obviously, you could say Billy Loomis's name comes from Loomis in Halloween, but Scream kind of did for slasher movies in the 90s. And maybe you could say Scream killed a slasher movie that was kicked off by Psycho. Scream is obviously controversial in its own right for a number of reasons, but it also has the hook that Psycho offers, which is who is actually the killer, right? It offers us that question. It keeps you guessing. It is, in the same way as Psycho, a suspense film as much as it is a slasher movie. Like Tom even noted in the episode, Wes made something scary again. Scream is to Wes Craven what Psycho is to Hitchcock. A master of horror deciding, I'm going to have one last really great showing. I am going to show him that I can still do it. I think that it is one of the quintessential, like Tom saying, quintessential movies these days. Scream is absolutely one of the quintessential movies of the 90s. It is a metatextual film that is still scary, it's still effective, and nothing that has come since, none of the sequels, and quite frankly, none of the movies that tried to ape it have ever come close to that. It is a movie that even people who don't like horror movies can agree, great film, landmark of its era. That opening sequence is great. What's your favorite scary movie is an iconic line. I got to give it over. Scream absolutely deserves a place in the National Film Registry.
Next week,
Sierra Webb joins us to talk What's Opera Doc.
I mean, one of the quintessential animators. Like when you think of comics, you think of like Stan Lee. He's the Stan Lee equivalent to animation.
You're Missing Out is a production of Neon Night Media. It's hosted by Mike Natale and Tom Lorenzo. The show is produced by Kyle Lampar and edited by Mike Natale and Kyle Lampar. More information about our hosts and guests are in the show notes. Thank you to Amanda Rush for our social media, and all of you for checking us out.
If you're listening right now or want to take the show on the go, every episode is available as an audio podcast. Follow You're Missing Out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. It helps folks find the show.
Want to watch the show or watch some of the films along with us? Great, that's why we're doing this. Don't leave us alone out here. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got video versions of every episode, uploads of some of the National Film Registry titles we're discussing, commentary tracks, and live streams. And once a month, I'll be uploading some content that's exclusive to the YouTube channel. So be sure to click subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified as soon as new stuff goes up. Because, let's be fucking real, I ain't sticking to a goddamn schedule.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.
And you'll see us next time. Because we don't watch you, you're watching us.